So I hate phone calls. Not so much answering them, that I can do, but I hate actually picking up the phone and calling people. Now, some people might say that this is just me being a typical millennial. We all think, after all, that phones are for anything and everything other than making phone calls. But I think actually that my hatred comes from a deeper place, from a childhood fear of rejection. There was some point in my childhood at which my parents said that if I wanted to play with a friend, I had to be the one to call them and invite them over. Now this terrified me because I was so scared that they would say no. And that no, for whatever reason, would feel like a rejection of me and our friendship, even if it was just because they were genuinely busy. And so I started at a young age to conflate telephone calls with that deep fear of rejection. Now I'm a little bit better at telephone calls these days. I've done some practicing, but I still carry with me that intense fear of rejection. And because of that, I am by nature very bad at reaching out, at initiating connections, at taking the first step in any kind of relationship. I tend to assume that if someone is not reaching out to me, then they aren't interested. Even with the people I'm closest to, I sometimes hesitate to be in touch, to be the one to call or even text, thinking that it'll just be an annoyance. And after all, if they actually wanted to hear from me, they would let me know. This also means that when I am feeling most vulnerable and the most in need of connection, I'm also the least likely to want to risk reaching out, to risk that gut punch of rejection. Now, as you might imagine, this is not a particularly helpful tendency to have in the best of times. And during a pandemic, when we're staying in our homes as much as we can and often yearning for connections outside of those walls, it is especially not helpful. And I know that I'm not the only one who hesitates to reach out, especially when I need it the most. It is so often the case that the moments when we most need to feel connected, to be in touch with someone who cares about us, are also the moments when we're least likely to initiate that connection. Too often in our vulnerable moments, we forget our connections, that web of people and groups who care about us, and we feel all alone, just like the little island in our story. The tide rolls back in, the fog envelops the web again, and we can't even begin to remember who it is that we could possibly reach out to. This is even harder right now, when so many of our usual ways of connecting to one another aren't an option. Just this past week, I was mourning the loss of the receiving line on Sunday morning, something I never thought I would mourn. But it sometimes feels like the one moment each week when I used to get to actually say hello to most of you. It's an easy time right now to forget our connections with one another without those daily reminders of physical presence. So many of us are having more moments than usual of feeling lonely or isolated, even if we're living in a house full of people. And yet, as our poem said, the web is real. And as we say each week, the mystery is that we are connected, even when we feel apart. We are a community, even if we can't be together in person. We can still reach out. We can still connect. We can still be there for one another in this time. One of the things that is giving me hope these days is the creative ways that people are figuring out how to connect with one another. This pandemic has birthed the car parade and the Zoom party. It has forced us to talk to our neighbors. It has sparked online gatherings that span multiple continents. And I wonder, what other creative ways have you found to be connected to the people you care about in this time? I'm going to invite you to type those in the chat box so that maybe we can create a running list of the ways we connect. We can inspire each other. Make a whole list together of new things to try. Will you share those? We are connected. And when we remember to reach out, when we take that vulnerable first step of initiating connection, when we get creative about how to stay connected, those lines of our interconnected web become easier to see. The truth is, the web only becomes visible when we work at it, when we do the hard work of being in relationship, of creating connection with one another. The mystery of our connection is not magic. It is something that we make happen together. Now, in a moment, we're going to hear a beautiful piece from a little ensemble of clarinets. And after that, I'm going to lead us in a short drawing reflection, inviting you to think about who it is that you are connected with and how you are keeping those connections in this time. So if you don't have pen and paper or something else to write with nearby, take a moment and go find some while we enjoy You've Got a Friend on clarinet. Okay, I've got my paper. Do you have yours? So we're going to make a visible representation of our interconnected web. So I want to invite you to start by drawing a big X. Take up your whole paper with that X, and then draw a line right through the middle. And next, you're going to draw a spiral starting from the center and making its way out all the way to the edges. There, you've got your web. Now in the center, we're going to write your name. So this is you. You're at the center of your web. So you remember that you too are a part of this web. And as we work our way out, I'm going to invite you to write in on your web the names of groups or people that you are connected with in particular categories. You might put yours in a different order. That's okay. This is your web. Make it your own. So we're going to start with the people who you think are in your inner circle. Put those near the center, near you. Then you might add in family, friends. I'll give you a minute to think of those people. Next, you might include any small groups that you're a part of. You might include coworkers if you are working at a job. You might include this community, UU Nashua, or the people you feel particularly connected with here. Maybe your neighbors, Maybe the people you know in your city or town. Maybe those acquaintances who we kind of know. Maybe the Facebook friends. Then maybe those state groups that you're a part of. The people in those. Maybe groups that encompass people from all over our country. Maybe our own Unitarian Universalist Association. And perhaps you finish with ways that you are connected to people from around the world. Who else might you add to your web? I'll give you a moment to finish filling it up. And now, take a moment to look at your web. How are you doing at connecting with all the people and groups in your web? Are you feeling connected enough? Are there places where you might feel too connected? Maybe the people living in your house who you need a break from? Where do you wish you felt more connected? And how might you make that happen? I want to invite you to keep this web somewhere where you can pull it out anytime you're feeling disconnected or alone, and pick someone on that web and reach out. Maybe you can use one of the creative ways of reaching out that we brainstormed together in the chat box. The mystery is that we are connected, even when we feel apart. May we remember our web of connections, finding ways to be reminded even when the fogs of stress, uncertainty, and fear obscure the strands of that web. Let us reach out to one another, creating and sustaining the web so that it may in turn sustain us. May it be so.